Mr. Speaker, the point that I was canvassing is that I know people have argued and said, oh, you know, Kenya's position on DRC. What is our position on DRC, Mr. Speaker? Kenya is part and parcel of the East African community. And for the last 2 or 3 years, East African community member states had military presence in DRC, and they ensured that they managed the conflict so successfully that by the time they were exiting late last year upon the request of DRC, not a single soldier had lost their life. But given that DRC had the strong view that because Rwanda is part and parcel of the East African community, they were not comfortable with having presence of the rest of the countries because they said they were conflicted, they requested that East African community soldiers pull out of that country and allow other regional bodies. And therefore SADC stepped up. And that's why there are soldiers from Southern Africa in that region doing peacekeeping mission. Therefore, I don't understand why people will want to say that Kenya, in their positioning of their situation in DRC, should have taken a different direction. How do you disown the rest of the East African community? A community that you are part and parcel of. In fact, in my own analysis, Mr. Speaker, we did better. And this situation could have been handled better when we had the presence of East African community forces. Remember, at that particular time, not a single life of a soldier had been lost, and they had managed to contain the hostilities. Look at what has happened since the coming into place of SADC forces. M23 has advanced. They have gained more territory. Their soldiers, some of them have been killed. Part of the resolutions of the meeting that happened in Addis Ababa on the night before the vote, including even allowing those soldiers to be transported back home. A very difficult situation, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I don't think that it is proper for us as a country to speculate and find fault just to score cheap political points, Mr. Speaker, because either you don't like the Prime Minister or you don't like the President, Mr. Speaker, and therefore you choose to argue and push narrative that, when taken through the test of logic, cannot hold to be true, Mr. Speaker. There are many reasons why people decide to vote this or the other way. But the thing that the Senate is trying to do this morning is to record its appreciation that when 22 heads of state vote for you for 6 straight rounds, that's nearly half of Africa. Isn't that really an accomplishment, Mr. Speaker? Doesn't it speak true to the fact that those people believe that this is the right leader for this particular continent, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, we all know that elections are very complicated processes, and there are many reasons why people may vote this or the other way. This was not our day, but the bigger conversation that had been pushed throughout the period for nearly 1 year, that Prime Minister Raila Odinga moved from each of the African capitals, sharing his vision of a united and prosperous Africa, alongside the ideals and the founding principles of the AUC, Mr. Speaker, are things that need not be lost. In fact, it is my hope, Mr. Speaker, that His Excellency Mohamud Yusuf, that was elected, will borrow on some of the good ideas. And I think I listened to him the other night or 2 nights ago on BBC, where he said he'll be reaching out because there are certain things which, for sure, the former Prime Minister of Kenya pushed that he strongly agrees with, and say if indeed he had the formula of achieving those ideas, the brilliant ideas that he had, then as a duly elected chairperson, he's duty-bound to reach out to people that have the age-old experience and the stature to push that particular initiative. Mr. Speaker, I also want to challenge Kenyans that when one of us steps out to the global stage, we are duty-bound to perhaps pose our local differences and not transport them to the international stage. It is not just Prime Minister Raila that has been a victim of this. You know for a fact that many of the fake accounts that were being operated of his opponents were being run from Nairobi here by people who simply disagree with the candidature of Raila Odinga. We need to mature and rise to the position of knowing that our local differences need not necessarily be exported to the global stage and show to everybody that we don't agree with this particular person or the other. I believe that in the same way, once an election is done, for example, in your county, and people